Welcome to the Land Use, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committee meeting of Denver City Council. Full coverage of this session of the Land Use, Transportation, and Infrastructure Committee begins now.
Use Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I'm Council President Stacy Gilmore, and I will go ahead and kick off our committee meeting this morning. We are going to have a presentation on volume-based trash pricing, and so before we get started, though, I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves, and we'll start on the left-hand side of the dais.
Good morning, Robin Kniech, at large.
Good morning, Madam President. Paul Cashman, South Denver, District 6.
Good morning, Kendra Black, District 4.
Jamie Torres, District 3.
Joel Clark, District 7.
All right, well, thank you all, and not sure if we have anyone participating online, but I haven't been informed. Okay, all right, well, we will go ahead and get started then, and so we'll go ahead and turn it over to our city colleagues for the presentation.
Thank you so much. Good morning, council members. My name is Charlotte Pitt. I'm with the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And this is our second informational briefing for you all. It's a joint effort between CASR, DOTI, and DHS. This presentation is primarily focused on a lot of operational questions that you all have had in our first informational briefing. So I'm going to take a moment and just speak to one slide and then turn it over to our DOTI colleagues. So some of the questions that you all had was around diversion rates and how other cities calculate diversion rates. As we mentioned, Denver's rate is about 26%, which is below the national average of 34%. A large number of the cities that you see on this map do in fact have construction and demolition debris laws in some way, shape, or form. However, a lot of them are not counting C&D in their diversion rates. You'll notice the city of Portland, city of San Francisco, city of Los Angeles all have very high rates. Those cities do in fact count C&D as part of that rate, but the city of Seattle, the city of Gainesville, Loveland, Longmont, Salt Lake City, and Boulder do not count C&D in their diversion rates, so they are still able to get upwards of 40 and 50%. I also wanted to point out that the state of Massachusetts did a study back in 2011 that demonstrated that pay-as-you-throw communities typically saw about half the waste disposal rate of communities that did not have pay-as-you-throw programs. So an interesting fact that is not on this map. I also just want to take a moment and perhaps a little bit of a liberty to give a little bit of background as you consider this proposal, just because I've been here for a very long time and have worked on it. I just want to point out that there is no golden ticket when it comes to waste diversion. It's a culmination of a lot of different programs. And we have been working towards this for a very long time. A lot of your council members have brought up the need for education and outreach and access to programs, and all of that has been a process to date. We started in 2005 by moving the city to a cart-based single-stream recycling program. We saw great strides in recycling efforts. In 2008, we added a compost collection program, which was pretty innovative for its time, where we commingled food waste and yard debris, and we saw, again, increased recycling and diversion rates. We automated our trash collection, moved away from dumpsters and into cart-based service. We saw about a 350-pound drop in waste from households on a yearly basis. So we have been making progress year over year, but it's really time to consider the next step. And I'll just remind everyone that this is foundational, and it is a part of the process that will get us to greater diversion in the future. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. Jessica Lally. Nice to see you again. I'm DOTI's project manager for this program. I'm just going to go over a couple slides reviewing what we presented last time. So these are the proposed trash cart rates. The concept is that the smallest trash cart costs the least per month and the largest trash cart costs the most per month. We're trying to incentivize maximizing use of our compost and recycling programs so that residents really see their trash decrease and can have that smallest trash cart and the smallest monthly bill. Recycle and compost carts are included at no additional cost. The fee is solely based on the trash cart size. Now, reviewing our affordability program, so this would be in the form of an instant rebate applied to the invoice, not a refund that the resident has to apply for. This is in partnership with Denver Human Services. They'll be the ones that are verifying the applications and defining the program rules. The eligibility is based on the income and number of people in a household, and we're offering 50, 75, or 100% off your bill based on that criteria. If this passes, the applications would go live prior to the invoicing, prior to the rollout, so that we can get as many people into the program as possible. A new development in that area is that DHS is exploring auto enrollment, so looking at our customers that are already in their programs and using their eligibility information to roll them into our program automatically. So I'd like to visit a topic that raised a lot of questions at our last presentation and kind of clarify these two processes. So fees for service are very different from fines for contamination. The processes associated with fines for contamination are very different. The fines are issued to a person. It's a one-time, rare occurrence. And rare in that with both of these concepts, education is always our first priority. We're saying that after multiple points of contact and education to the resident, if a fine is issued for contamination, that follows a completely separate process, which is the administrative citation process. It has nothing to do with the property or the liens. So that is an explanation of the fines for contamination or illegal dumping. And now I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the process for the fees for service. So first and foremost, I'd like to make it clear that Dottie works with its customers. So aside from the regular quarterly invoices, quarterly late payment reminders, there are no late fees associated with late payments. We'll also be sending out postcards about the rebate program for anyone who's accumulating late bills. Today, Dottie Customer Service also works with residents to establish payment plans. So they do this for storm drainage, and we do it for compost billing today, where if customers have overdue invoices, we work with them to get them paid. And there's a lot of flexibility in that program. But the goal is that we want to take advantage of this upfront rebate. We want to get as many people as possible that need assistance paying into the affordability program. But we understand that if residents fall behind, we are looking at solutions for helping them with one-time utility assistance type payments. So after all of those measures that I just mentioned, the payment reminders, working with customers to establish payment plans, educating them on the affordability program, enrolling our residents in the affordability program, after all that time, and the resident still does not pay their bill and they accumulate $200 in 90 days past due, the process is very similar to, it's exactly the same as what happens with storm drainage and sanitary sewer today with our wastewater billing. So Dottie does send another warning to the property owner. It's called an intent to lien letter, and at that point, the property owner is notified that they have 30 days to pay before the lien is issued. Then the service lien is issued if they do not pay at that point, and every year the service lien goes to tax sale and is accruing 1% interest. If it's sold at tax sale, the lien can be paid off within 3 years at 1% interest. So that's up to 4 years with no late or legal fees, where a resident has the opportunity to fully pay for the overdue trash fees and stop the process. And important to note that Treasury only issues 1 to 5 deeds per year for unpaid taxes and fees. And they have never issued a deed solely based on unpaid wastewater fees. And mostly those deeds are for vacant properties. So I hope that that helped clear up some of the confusion or questions around this topic. I certainly learned a lot. And I'm going to dive into a topic that's a little bit more up my alley, some follow-up on the education outreach efforts. So diving in deeper to our print and direct mail plan. So if this passes, we intend to set out an initial newsletter, which would be the announcement of the new fee, the expanded services, the affordability program, and kind of why we're doing it. And this is an example on the screen here of what that newsletter would be, would look like, bilingual. Shortly after that, we'd follow up with a postcard focusing on the instant rebate. We're also working with Denver Housing Authority to generate specific education for them as their tenants do not pay these bills, they still need education on composting and recycling, and so we'll be working closely with them on those educational materials. We'll then also send out letters to property owners and current compost customers before invoicing starts, and then after invoicing, towards the end of the year, a second newsletter will go out specifically speaking to the compost rollout, focusing on contamination, how to use those carts correctly, and when those service dates start. And an update on where we're at with our community partners. So last week we presented to DHS's community network meeting, which is where all Denver organizations go to learn about DHS's assistance programs, and we are hoping to be one of those. So we made a lot of good partners there, and we will be returning to that meeting. Last Friday, Art gave a great presentation for a large group in Montbello in Spanish at Academy 360. It's great turnout, great conversation. We also have a group, we reached out to a bunch of community-based organizations. We have a list about 25 that are interested in doing some level of contracted outreach with us. And we are going to meet with about 4 of them this month to kind of to host a focus group to establish like what the scope of work looks like, what these contracts and payment look like with the experts. In June, we'll work with the larger group of community-based organizations, define their scopes, their contracts, and then schedule those kickoff and initial trainings to get everyone on the same page. We'll also begin planning our outreach with DPS for the fall in June as they're ready, as they're wrapping up the year and ready to meet with us. And now I'm going to hand the operations over to Art Mejia, the Director of Solid Waste.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning, council members. Art Mejia, Director of Solid Waste Management. We're going to talk about operations. I got a couple of 4 slides to go over, and we'll start with the benefits of weekly recycling. When you talk about weekly recycling, why? We've heard the question, from some community members, some council members. We went out, we took a look at why we wanted to implement weekly recycling. The need for capacity here in Denver was identified a while back. When I started working for the city, that was one of my areas of interest, to make sure that our residents had the capacity to use our recycling programs. We've taken a look at a couple of reports, and there's actually plenty of benefits from doing weekly recycling. It increases the recycling, it saves resources, the cost of raw material extraction, also the transportation and material production. When we take a look at all the benefits, the question with additional trucks into our system, it has been there. And I wanted to make sure that we understand that, yeah, we are adding a couple of trucks to the system, but the benefits of weekly recycling outweigh the the emissions from those trucks. And we do have some additional information if anybody would like to take a look at those reports. The compost service rollout, our plan is to implement compost from day one to, our plan is to implement weekly recycling on day one. However, compost will be starting in early January. The reason for that is obviously we had to order some trucks for additional compost, and we are planning on the delivery of those trucks in the first quarter, through the first and second quarter of next year. For those customers that will not be receiving the compost service, we plan to give them a $3 inconvenience credit until their service begins. Once again, the plan is for weekly recycling to start on day one from this program. We've also had some questions on some cart assistance. How are our customers, residents, going to be able to move all 3 containers now to the front of their property or to the back of the property? We already have a process in place, and I've talked about this before. Dottie does anything that we can to make sure that our residents are able to use our services. The process that we have right now is if you need help, elderly resident or disabled resident, injured, if you need temporary help with moving your containers to the point of collection, we have a process where you can call 311 that will create a work order for the operations team. Then our supervisors, field superintendents, will go out, make a visit, and try to come up with a plan that works best for your situation. We understand that every situation is different, and in operations, we try to accommodate every single possible challenge that we may face out there to make sure that we provide that service. At the end of the day, we can either work with the residents to help them out to, get the container from their fence, from the side of the house, from the side of the garage. But if there is no other option, we will go in and grab the container from a determined area and take it out to the street for the residents. We are having some conversations with the Office of Aging to make sure that we and everybody in the city knows about this program and that we are able to offer it to whoever is in need. Cart management. There's also been some questions about, well, now we're going to add 2 more carts into the system. We're taking a look at that. And just as I mentioned before, these are also specific challenges that we have in different areas. I know I have gotten a couple of emails, questions, but these are solutions that we need to work directly with the residents to make sure that we address their need. There is no cookie cutter approach to this because all the areas that we service could be different, and solid waste management operations will work with the residents to find a solution that best works for them. We do recommend that people share their recycling and compost containers if there is a need for that. We also got to take a look at that with weekly composting. We are expecting to go out and remove some recycling containers because there won't be a need for that. And I just want to make it clear that as I talked about this last week, if you need 2 containers, we will give you 2. If you need 3, we will give you 3. Compost and recycling containers. So there is no limit to composting and recycling. We want to make sure that we capture all that material and that our residents have the capacity to use those containers. And the other thing that we got to keep in mind also with this program as we think about rolling this out is that a resident does not have to set all 3 containers out every single week. As you know, recycling could be low some weeks, and some other weeks you could have a full bin. So compost, we do recommend that you set that out every week. We don't want to keep it in your can for more than 1 week, but we will work together with the residents and to make sure that there is outreach and communication out there so they understand all the things that we can do for them. And with that, we are ready for some questions.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to do my best. My voting system is broken, So I'm relying on Teams. So if you see me jumbling back and forth, it's because I'm trying to multitask. So I have several colleagues in the queue. First up, I believe I have Councilwoman Knich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to go back to slide 7, and I wanted to see, I don't know if this is Jessica or Grace maybe, but the slide says that, so you work with folks, you know, basically if they go on a payment plan, they never end up on slide 7, is that right? So if they say I can pay $5 or $10 a month until extra until I catch up, if they're working with you, they never end up on slide 7, right?
Right.
Okay, but if someone doesn't work with you, this slide says they have to be 90 days past due and $200. Can you explain to me, can anyone actually get $200 behind in 90 days? And talk to me about how long it really takes under the fees we have.
Right, let me clarify that. So if someone has the largest cart, it'll take them about 10 months to reach $200 past due. If someone has the smallest cart, it'll take them almost 2 years. And then also important to mention that if someone is enrolled in the Affordability Program, it'll take them even longer to get to that $200 past due threshold. The 90 days is not really as important.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. That's all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Knich. Next up, we have President Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start off, thank you for the presentation and the work that you've done on this. Art, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions first. Last week, when we met for my briefing, it couldn't have happened on a better day, but I've been testing out within my family the 35-gallon cart, and apparently it's not unique that the 35-gallon baby cart, which we call it affectionately in our home, was eaten by the truck. And so it was gone. And so could you talk a little bit about what is the percentage of times that happens, and are we operationally ready to deploy this if there is some glitchiness with the trucks and the carts, et cetera? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually went back and did some research on what happened to your specific address, and the container did go inside the truck. Because of that, we went out and had a retraining with our drivers. So let me first address the challenge of that is sometimes that does happen. And it doesn't only happen to 35-gallon containers, it happens to 65-gallon containers, it happens to 95-gallon containers. So that has to do with two things. One, it could be your container, the condition of the container. Two, it could be driver error, and we try to address both. So after the incident that happened last week, we went out and retrained all of our drivers. So the change in the process that we did was to make sure that when that does happen, our drivers or a supervisor makes a customer contact. We will make that work order to replace your container the following day. But those are the operational issues that solid waste as an industry faces. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I can tell you that this is not, I've seen this before, and we try to address those issues. So this is not a problem that happens all the time. We do have about 7,000 35-gallon containers deployed. And I want to correct myself because I think during our meeting I told you 11,000. So I went back and I actually went out to the city and counted all of them.
Good job.
And so I went back and I took a look at the numbers that we had. So we have 7,000 35-gallon containers throughout the whole city already. So this is not a new size of container that we're using. This is something that we have already been using for the longest here in Denver, from my understanding. But once again, it does happen once in a while, and we try to prevent that. So from now on, we will make that work order, and we will make that customer contact to let the residents know that their container was technically, quote unquote, eaten by the truck.
Okay, I appreciate that. Could you, just as information for us as we're considering this, how many times does that happen over an annual basis? And you don't have to give that to us now, but how often does it happen? Because it sounds like, at least from our conversation, that once that occurs, that cart is no longer usable, or there was the comment that it goes on your recycle pile. And I'm just curious how many times that happens with all three of the different carts for trash, but then also with compost and recycling. And it would just be good on an annual basis to understand how many get eaten and how many then are no longer able to be repurposed or reused again. They really have to then be recycled.
Yeah, I will have to go back and take a look at to see if we have data to that detail. Our work orders usually just would say container exchange, but not the reason why. But let me take a look at the system and see what we can come up with. And if we do have information, I'll forward it to you.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. My second question is also for you, Art. I really appreciate the customer service that you all are working on, especially for residents that may not be physically able to pull the carts back, and that I know it's not well advertised right now, but that if folks call 311, they can request a driver to assist them. And I just want to make sure operationally, again, that we have normalized that process with all of your drivers, that anybody who's driving a compost, recycling, or trash truck in Denver, that they know that that's going to be a possible ask in the future, if not now, that we're asking you to park your vehicle, get out of it, walk up and pull trash carts back behind the fence or put them in the garage to assist residents out. And so could you talk a little bit how you have worked on customer service and engaging with the public? Because a lot of times folks that are driving vehicles are doing that because they don't really want to engage with the public necessarily. And so just wondering how you're normalizing that and any training or best practices that you're sharing with your drivers.
Yeah, and I can tell you from the customer service perspective, right, we expect all of our employees to be able to, when we need to make contact with the public. I know that as a solid waste driver, sometimes you are alone in that truck the whole day. However, the expectation for the solid waste department is that we are making those resident contacts when we have to, and the expectation is to be providing that excellent customer service. That is my expectation. That is the expectations of the managers, and that should be the expectations from all of our residents to receive that service. When we talk about the program, and I know I've gotten this question a lot, right? It sounds to be counterproductive. It sounds to be not very efficient. We provide a service in solid waste. We have to make sure that that service is provided one way or another. Yeah, for some residents, it might sound that getting out of your truck and getting that container, it's counterproductive, but somehow we want to make sure that we provide that excellent customer service, and those are the things that we're going to have to do. There's no other way around it. But with that said, and having an operations background for over 19 years, once again, this is nothing new to me. We take a look at the routes, and I'll give you an example, right? We rerouted the city in a way where we took into consideration some different areas, and according to the need in those specific areas, that's how long your routes are. So you could have technically a driver right now with 1,200 containers on the route, which means he's picking up constantly, and he's not necessarily getting out of the truck a lot of the times, right? So he's able to pick up 1,200 containers. However, we do have other routes where we have 800 containers because there are some challenges on the route, whether it's an alley pickup, whether he's got more times that he has to get out of the truck. So we all take that into consideration when we made these routes. We want to make sure that we are as efficient as we can, knowing what we have to do. So once again, the service has to be provided. So yeah, we're going to have some routes that are picking up 800 containers, but another route will pick up 1,200, and we want to make sure that our drivers stay efficient through the whole day.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for those answers. I believe my next question is for Jessica. So thank you, Art, and appreciate we got our cart back, I think, the same day, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you for getting that. So appreciate it. Jessica, I wanted to follow up with you from our briefing conversation. As you know, and I've shared, and that we are in Green Valley Ranch struggling with a very aggressive homeowners association, and that they currently right now have 50 single-family homes in the queue for foreclosures. And when we have looked into those 50 foreclosures, it's amazing that many times those fines and fees started out with a trash receptacle that was left curbside beyond the rules of the HOA, and so that started the accumulation of fines and actually put these homes into foreclosure with this homeowners association. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about what your outreach has been to date, or your planned outreach with all of the homeowners associations through the city and county of Denver, letting them know that this program is being proposed, and asking them, encouraging, learning about what their rules and regulations are about pulling back trash carts, recycling, compost, so that we don't start to see accumulation of fines from folks when they're mandated to participate in the city program.
So solid waste has always made it clear to the residents that they need to keep their carts on their property. That's how you prevent contamination. It's how you avoid fines with keeping your cart out at the curb for too long. And that will continue to be the message, that the cart needs to be on your property and safe, mainly for our purposes from contamination, but you're absolutely right. And currently our education working group is looking into the different contacts for those HOAs so that we can go and present to them on these specific topics that affect them. And so I don't have a solid plan for you just yet, but I will follow up with you once we know more about who our contacts are and what our presentation schedule is for that.
Okay, I would really like to know what that is, and with a quickness, hopefully, because as this moves forward, I want to make sure that we're not inadvertently, or an unintended consequence of doing this is putting single-family homeowners who reside within a homeowners association, that we're fully communicating and educating that homeowners association board of directors or the property management company that they contract with, that we're not creating an added burden for residents, especially as these 50 homes that are currently in foreclosure process, a lot of them started out with, they had their trash cart out on the curb too long, or it was on their property, but within those HOAs, that's not good enough. And I live in a general improvement district in Montbello as well. We can't have it up by our garage. We can't have it on the driveway. It actually has to be pulled all the way behind the fence and out of sight, or put in the garage. But as you might imagine, we're going to have a black cart, recycling, and then a compost as well. And so if you could please let me know where you're at with that outreach, I would appreciate it. And my last question, and thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, is where has the conversation been, especially for folks that are have a diagnosed disabling condition, and so they qualify for disability in Colorado, in the city. And I've talked with quite a few residents that maybe have an individual who qualifies for disability, is physically challenged, and they have quite a bit of medical waste, as you might imagine. And that has to be thrown away in the trash cart. And has there been conversation, or where is the current conversation around exempting individuals who have a disability, who have qualified for disability in our city? Why aren't we exempting them from this program?
So I am familiar with some of the residents that you're speaking of in your district. We've worked with them directly to provide them extra trash carts when our current policy is that people can only have one trash cart. So I know that we are aware of those scenarios and are sensitive to them, and just like we've done in the past, are willing to work with them, of course, in the future. I don't know if Dana, if you have any other assistance recommendations for someone in that scenario, and if you'd like to come up and speak to it, or we can get some more information back to you.
I think in the interest of time, it doesn't look like anybody's jumping up to answer that question. And so if somebody could give me some more information about how that was vetted and decided against, that would be really helpful going forward. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilman Cashman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. A little context. I've struggled with some details of this program along the way, and I have struggled with the idea of adding any fees at this point in time with just the situation we're in, with inflation crazy and people still impacted by the pandemic and so on. And at the same time, I fully recognize the importance of this element of addressing climate change. And so it's not a one-sided thing for me, and I appreciate the time that y'all have spent with me going through the details of the program. And for my colleagues, I wanted to share some information Charlotte was good enough to get me that really clarifies the scope of what we're talking about. The city services 180,000 homes. They're estimating 25 to 30,000 of those homes are multi-family duplex up to 7. As for the breakdown in carts, 5% at 35 gallons, 30% at 65 gallons, 65% at 95 gallons. So thank you again. That was very helpful to me. Jessica, we talked briefly when I ran into you at the Corey Merrill meeting. Tell me again, as far as the bill goes to the property owner, correct? Whether they're living there or whether they're renting the property out. So talk to me about that.
Yep, the bill will go to the property owner. It's the same person that is paying the storm drainage and sanitary sewer bills today. Okay,
so then it's, if it is a rental situation, it's up to them to deal with their tenant on how, whether they include it in the rent or whether the tenant then needs to pay the bill, so on and so. Do you have any feel how that actually gets done?
Well, like storm and sanitary sewer today, property owners like to hold on to that bill and pay that themselves because of the lien process associated with non-payment. And so they typically take care of that, and we expect to see that with trash, although we cannot, physically stop a landlord from handing an invoice to their tenant to pay. But if that tenant, I want to be clear, if that tenant is responsible to pay and they are eligible for the affordability program, they can apply. If that is the scenario, but we do recommend that property owners pay this bill.
So the lien responsibility would remain with the property owner.
Always.
Always. But if the tenant qualifies, and somehow, how will you prove that it's the tenant's responsibility?
Well, just how it exists today, you can't prevent someone from logging in with the invoice information and paying a bill.
Gotcha. Okay, fine. Thank you. On slide 6, and I don't think you need to worry about going back to it, but you were talking about that and said something about a one-time utility type payment assistance might be available. I kind of missed that.
I can go over it. So we have ways to address, reminding someone to pay their bill, signing them up for the Affordability Program, working with them for payment plans to get caught up on overdue bills. But let's say they finally realize that they should have signed up for the Affordability Program and they have a pile of overdue bills sitting on their kitchen table and they don't know what to do with them. They might need assistance in paying those overdue bills, and we're looking into options with DHS's programs in one-time utility assistance for that scenario.
Okay, thank you. I'm not thrilled with the $3 inconvenience fee. Right now, our trash is included in the taxes that we pay. Recycling has been as well. So the real gift, while I'm finding as I talk to people, I had initially not been convinced at the need to increase recycling pickup from biweekly to weekly. More people I talk to think that's a great idea. But for a lot of people, the addition of compost is the big deal. So I'm just saying we don't need to debate it. I've expressed this before, but I'm not thrilled with the $3 inconvenience fee when I'm not getting that service at all. So
great.
That is that. And Mr. Mejia, just to clarify something you said, something that I thought you said that recycling may be reduced because of composting being added. Did I hear that?
No.
Okay.
I think it was about the extra bin being removed.
Oh, okay, yeah. Are you talking about the extra recycling bin being removed?
Yeah, I guess, but I'm just trying to figure why would a recycling bin be able to go away because you're composting, because recycling doesn't compost.
Right. So compost is part of recycling, but that's a whole different conversation. What I meant to say was that we might have some recycling customers that could have 2 carts today that may only need 1 moving forward. So there's not going to be a need for two carts.
Okay. I don't really see it, but I don't need to worry about it right now.
If we're going every week to pick up your recycling container.
Oh, okay. So it's the frequency
yes.
rather than, I gotcha. Thank you very much. And that does make sense. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Let's see, two last things. One is, I'm convinced the people that work for your department work really hard, 99% of the time. But I was distressed when I went by the Cherry Creek Transfer Center the other day. Happened to have a couple of huge pieces of cardboard to get rid of, and so pitched them in the truck. And the gentleman who was monitoring the truck was just kind of standing there in a daze as the guy behind me put a few huge pieces of styrofoam in with the recycling. And I don't believe we recycle styrofoam, do we?
We do not.
All right, fine. So, humans are still out there, but it happened to be when I was going by and it concerned me. The last thing I wanted to say, and this is just a philosophical view, yes, we need to increase recycling. I've been thrilled since I've been purchasing composting with the amount of yard waste I've been able to compost that previously I would just put in the trash. I think that is an important addition. Recycling at one level it's just a losing game. And I hope moving forward, we spend a lot more time talking about reducing and reusing. You know, we definitely get a benefit from recycling rather than dumping it in the landfill. But the real win is reducing packaging, reusing what we can reuse, repairing what we can repair. So thank you for the time. Thank you for your answers. Appreciate it.
Completely agree with you, but I just want to go on the record and say that my guys are 99.9% hardworking.
Next up, we have Councilwoman Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all. I am 100% in support of this proposal. It is a proven way to divert waste to recycling and composting and reduce what goes into the landfill. So we all know that our climate is in crisis and that this is one of the many steps that we need to take. Cities generate 70% of our greenhouse gases, according to Grace Rink. And this is one of the ways that greenhouse gases are developed as out of landfills. And so as a council that's committed to these issues, this is one really important thing we need to do. Charlotte's right. You guys have been talking about it for a really long time. When I started here in 2015, you'd already been talking about it for 10 years. So it's time. It is time, people. As Paul Cashman said, we do need to reduce single use. Everyone knows I've got it out for single-use plastic. And I think we all also need to be really committed to educating the public and get people to quit using single-use, especially plastic. There are so many alternatives, like no one should be drinking water out of a single-use plastic water bottle. Hello, Randy. So little of it is recycled anyway. You know, only 8% is recycled. It's just, there is no excuse. We need, as a society, to quit using so much single-use plastic. So I just had a couple questions, and I will intermingle my comments. Charlotte, so my neighborhood was, I'm lucky enough to be one of the very first neighborhoods that compost was introduced in, and I've been paying the fee all these years, and I am a dedicated compost person. I was telling Sky, I even make my husband compost his like dirty Kleenexes. Like, we are committed. So can you tell us, I don't know if you're the right person, I guess anyone could answer this, how many customers are composting now, and what will the difference be in my fee? So how much am I paying now, and then how much will I be paying if I get the small black bin, which it's just me and my husband, we can totally commit to the small black bin.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So the compost fee would go away. And if you elect for the smallest trash cart size, you'd actually be saving a little bit per month, about 75 cents a month. If you're already composting, you already know how little trash you actually have, and that's pretty doable.
Yeah. And about how many customers do we have now who are
about 30,000 customers.
Oh, 30,000. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, great. And then also, I think, Charlotte, it was in 2018 when you did the stakeholder process for updating the solid waste master plan. And I was lucky enough to be able to attend a bunch of those stakeholder meetings, and we met with trash haulers like Waste Management and a bunch of construction companies, and we talked to owners of office buildings and multifamily, and really learned a lot about how they handled waste. And then you all implemented the license for waste haulers, and I know you have learned a lot from those haulers. So can you tell us a bit more? I know you have in the appendix, I think it's on slide 18, some really interesting information that I think a lot of people don't realize about the diversion from commercial buildings.
You can take it. Slide 18, if you want to put it as the...
Yeah. Apparently we have the slide for you. Yes, so we implemented the hauler licensing program back in 2016, 2017, and started collecting data in 2018. It is self-reported, so there could be some inconsistencies there. But what we found is the commercial sector is actually diverting more waste than the residential sector. It is a very large portion of the waste. It's about a 35% commercial waste, about 50% construction, and about 15% residential. But they are reporting a higher diversion rate than what we are residentially.
So I think that's really interesting, and I think most people probably agree that they should be doing more, but it's really interesting to learn that what they are doing. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's important that people understand that. Also, back to the update to the solid waste master plan, which I know that was recently completed, one of the recommendations is both this volume-based pricing as well as getting commercial buildings on board to do more, as well as construction waste. And so I have a couple of comments, I guess. I've told people this before, but there was a 50-year-old Kmart torn down in my district last year, and I went there for the day they were demolishing it, and the company that was doing the demolition was actually separating all the waste. He was separating asphalt, he was separating cement, he was separating the steel from the building, and there's a market for all those materials, and so he was actually recycling them and making money off of it. So it is happening. It's not happening enough. On the other hand, I see dumpsters all over our neighborhoods where people are remodeling their houses, and man, they are full of corrugated cardboard. And I know that is something that we don't want to see. And so when we're talking about that next step, I think that's something we really need to talk about, is the amount of corrugated cardboard that is used to package building materials that are involved with remodeling and construction projects. I just had two more tiny questions. One, someone sent me an email that said that if we do this, we're going to have TVs and mattresses all over our streets. So can someone tell us more about how people should be disposing of their TVs and mattresses?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to e-waste, so TVs and mattresses, two different types of materials. So e-waste, it's all electronic waste. We do have a program where we subsidize a recycling payment. They would have to take those materials to a e-waste recycling facility, but they could contact the solid waste department, and we would give you technically a coupon to take it to the e-waste facility. When it comes to mattress, there's mattress recycling facilities that we could use more, and we can improve that program. But we have done in the past events where we recycle all those type of materials, and we plan to continue doing that in the future.
Thanks. And I know there's private organizations that also do those events. I know there's always churches in my district that have electronics recycling days, as well as mattress. And so it might be beneficial if you guys know what's going on in the community, and you could just share those with us for us to share with our constituents. Even if you're not doing it, it doesn't matter if you're
Right.
taking to a church or a Denver-sponsored event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, my final question is, I know it'll take some time for a lot of people to get used to this idea, to get on board, to sign up. We already know there's going to be some resistance from people. And so what happens if people don't sign up? What if 6 months go by and someone is still refusing to sign up? What happens?
So when you talk about signing up, are you talking about recycling on compost?
I'm talking about signing up to pay for your black card.
Signing up to pay for your black card.
I can speak to that. So they're not going to be signing up. We're going to be sending invoices to all of the people who receive storm drainage bills and are eligible for our service.
Okay, so everyone will still continue to get trash service?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And thank you again, 100% behind you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Black. Next up, we have Councilman Torres.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Charlotte, you had said a statistic early in the PowerPoint presentation about, I think it was the pounds that were diverted early on. Can you just repeat that for me? I missed it. 30-something.
From dumpster conversion. Yes, in 2014 through 2017, we eliminated dumpsters and manual trash collection in the city. And if you look at from the beginning to the end, there was almost a 350-pound per household reduction in waste collected. A lot of that was just dumpsters were large and people could put a lot of stuff in there. So when we moved to individual carts, that was a huge drop in the volume of waste that went to landfill.
That's per household per year?
It's an average, yeah.
No, that's amazing. Okay, Thank you so much. I have a question about how you've been coordinating with 311 for when this rolls out. Like, is there a particular routing of calls or complaints that will be handled by 311? Or if you can just walk me through any of that conversation.
Yeah, so we work really closely with 311. Their managers over there are always, open to calling me, and I'm calling them, and they're a part of a number of our working groups for this program. So currently there is a process in place today where 311 takes calls related to solid waste management. There's a list of things that they can address themselves and then close the case, and then there's everything else that they route to solid waste. And so we are currently in the process of deciding how those work orders and those cases will look for this program, so that their agents know exactly what to pass to our agents or how to respond to these new topics and what they're comfortable with answering and what's really more for solid waste customer service to answer. So we're in constant communication with them.
Okay, okay. What size containers are standard kind of distribution right now? I'm assuming I have maybe a 65-gallon at my house. Is that kind of what folks start out with?
Yeah, so 65 compost usually was the standard trash. The majority of the trash cans that we have are 95-gallon containers.
Oh, okay. So you might currently have the biggest one.
You may have the biggest one.
Okay.
We're trying to standardize that process, thinking about the rollout in the future, and is just giving everybody 95-gallon containers, assuming they have the space for it. But we're going to have all three sizes available for the residents' needs.
So swapping out sizes happens when?
Swapping out sizes would happen. In our community meetings, what I've been recommending people is to wait at least a month or two before they decide to swap sizes, just to make sure that it's working for them. You don't want to get into a situation where you right away downsize. There's an influx of thousands of work orders. We're trying to catch up, and then there's a need for you to go up again, and then that will create an additional work order. So the message from me has been to wait a couple of months, just to make sure that you're using it correctly, you know exactly what you need to do, and that fits your family needs.
Okay. Did you want to add something, Jessica?
One more thing. Just one more thing. So residents will also have the ability to log in online and see what size carts, how many of each they have at their address.
Okay, that's helpful. And just a reminder, we'll still have large item pickup monthly. We'll still be able to call for illegal dumping in the way that we do right now. Okay. Is it an open invitation to speak to neighborhood groups? And is that kind of just on the table all the time as you start to ramp up?
Certainly, and we're looking for the long-term partners too. The Promodora type model where then that group goes out and spreads the word for us and helps people in their community sign up for the Affordability Program and helps teach people how to log in online, how to see what kind of cart you have at your address. So
are we saying that we're funding that kind of? We are. Okay.
Definitely.
Very good. Thank you. And then Start date, remind me what kind of the goal is?
So invoices would start rolling out in October along with weekly recycling.
Okay. And then on the presentation in the appendix is the very last slide is the implementation costs. Sources, I'm looking more at Q4. I think it's actually the second to last slide. These are one-time costs?
Yes, everything except for education and any ongoing billing system licenses.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and tonnage, of course.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Torres. Next up, we have Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Committee Chair. I just want to say thanks to the team. I know this has been a long haul, a very, very long haul for some people. I tell people that, I've been working on this in some way for now 7 years. It seems crazy that I've been here in this seat for 7 years. And I know Councilwoman Kinich was working on it for years before I even got here. And I think, Charlotte, you were working on it for, we won't bring up how long you've been working on it for a very, very long time, and all of the awesome, smart people who have been putting a lot of time into this and solving for all of these problems and issues as we go along. It's just been awesome to watch and see, and then see the evolution of all of the I think something that gets lost in here, and I know we've said it before, is just how many big public processes have happened that have led to a recommendation that we do this, and yet we're still sitting here having not done it, right? Even though we continue to hear from those processes from our citizens, hey, this is what you have to do, and you need to do it now. So it's exciting to see that evolution, and really exciting to finally be sitting in committee, not quite ready for action, but next time it's in front of us, ready for action in committee, and to really start talking about it being time to implement this program. So thank you for all the work to get to here so far. I had one quick question I want to jump in on. I know there's been lots of talk back and forth about the demand for weekly recycling, and I know that all of us always have anecdotal evidence of what this happened, and I heard this and I heard that, and certainly for me, I hear all of the time that people want weekly recycling and get tons of requests for a second bin, that people can go back to not having two bins and just for recycling, to try not to throw anything away. But one of the things that struck me outside of, just here's what I'm hearing, is how often that came up and how popular that was in all of these community events that you have been having. So can somebody just speak to kind of the response to that weekly recycling at all of the presentations in neighborhoods that you've been giving that are maybe bigger than just my experience with the folks who are calling me or that I'm chatting to in my neighborhood, but since you've been doing it citywide?
Yeah, so over the last 3 months, we've been working with CASR to attend community meetings and present to them on this proposal. And by far, the thing that they cannot, that they're so excited about is weekly recycling. That has been the biggest point of feedback that we've heard. And what we're hoping to address with weekly recycling is that, since the pandemic and a lot of people are shopping online, there's been so much extra cardboard out there in the recycling stream that with biweekly recycling, sometimes that extra cardboard ends up in the trash. And so we're hoping that if we implement weekly recycling, we'll be able to capture all of that overflow cardboard and overflow recycling in general. And we've seen this work in other cities. We know that the environmental benefit of recycling more completely outweighs the impact of more trucks on the road. Like Art said, it's definitely more beneficial to recycle more.
Awesome. Well, I definitely think that, that's what I'm hearing is people are very excited about that. Recycling is something that's been around for a long time. People are used to it, and as they've gotten better at it and known what they can get in there, they feel worse about putting it in the landfill and want to do that right thing. And what I'm excited about is I think that is also where people who have the green bin have gotten on compost, when they start to realize, oh my gosh, all this stuff that I was just throwing away that literally can go and turn back into something that we use in our gardens and on fields where we're growing our food, gets people maybe even more excited than that. But right now, that's an area that 30,000 of the 180,000 are there and are really excited about that. And I think that it's going to be exciting for the rest of the city to catch on to that fever in the same way that they have on recycling. But I know that weekly recycling has been very popular in the conversations I've had. So I just wanted to confirm what I've been hearing about that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Committee Chair.
Thank you. I have a few questions and just want to acknowledge we have Debbie Ortega watching, and she will be submitting her questions online. And we also have Councilwoman Sita Baca watching as well. So can you tell me when the exact start date for the billing is? I looked through your PowerPoint and there's not a bold date.
Yep, so invoices would start rolling out in October, specifically October 7th, because that is the current storm drainage billing cycle start date.
Okay, and so
but not everyone gets one October 7th. I want to be clear, it's not physically possible to invoice everyone in the city at that time. So throughout the first quarter, those invoices will be going out.
Okay, and then if you want to sign up for composting and you don't have composting, can you sign up around October 7th and you would be able to get a compost bin even if we don't have enough trucks and compost bins?
I could pass this over to Art, but I think he wants me to answer this one.
Yeah, with this is going to be a huge change for our routing for the need that we have. It is not going to be operationally possible to be able to sign up on your own, because what that's going to do, it's just going to create different accounts all over the city that we will have to service, and that it's going to affect our service. And honestly, I think we would rather just stop the service until we roll it out than to provide a mediocre service to you.
So for the people who can have compost bins now, they'll continue composting?
Absolutely. They will continue to keep their bins. Our routes are set, and they will be continuing to receive that service.
And when do you project most people in Denver would have their compost bin?
So we're thinking of starting rolling out that program in January, early January.
So January of 23.
Correct. Okay. That's the service, right? So there's a couple of components to that. We are going to secure the cards. So you might receive the card before you actually receive the service. And obviously we're gonna leave some communication. The container is gonna be taped shut, that you cannot use it until the program is ready, and that you will get more communication letting you know when you're ready to start that program in your area.
But for people who sign up, so that might be where it gets confusing, right? Because like say I have my block, I don't have an alley. So you physically see everyone's trash cart on the street. That's how I always remember it's trash day. And I also have the app, which reminds you if you pay attention, which sometimes I don't, I will admit. So I always just know, I think that might be confusing for people in my neighborhood where we don't have as many alleys, right? Everything is on the street, like we physically don't have alleys. People who get the bins might put out their compost bin because they see everybody else's compost bins out. Because I have a neighborhood that actually has a high percentage of composters.
Yes. Our preference is, and we will do everything in our power to communicate the change in the program. Our preference is going to be that you do not set your container out until you're ready to, until we have fully automated routes in your area. However, I can tell you that, you know, we are going to have some of those issues, so we will address them, you know, as they come up. We definitely, what I can say about composting is that we're going to continue the service. The start of this program falls in the fall and winter, which the compost material is usually reduced. So that's going to help us out a little bit for our routes to have a little bit more capacity to pick up some containers. So if we run into those situations, I can tell you that we're going to do the right thing, and more than likely, we're just going to take care of our customers.
Okay, so then in your slide deck, you have Denver Housing Authority as one of the, but let me just clarify. So if you have a housing, like I have the Quig Newton housing, that's private industry, right? That's not serviced by the city and county of Denver?
We service somebody.
Yeah, I can clarify that one. So there are almost 1,000 homes in Denver that are part of Denver Housing Authority that do have our carts. And so I'm speaking specifically to those addresses. There are some that have private services, some that have our dumpsters, but I'm just talking about the ones that have our carts.
Okay, but if you live like in the Quig Newtons in my district, you don't have carts, they still have bins. So you would not be providing service for them, correct? Because
Right.
and the clarity I want to say that is because I send out these slide decks to my community, to all our RNOs, and when you say you'll service DHA without the parentheses of the 1,000 ones or any clarification, I think people in my council district who live at Quig Newtons would be thinking that they might be participating in this program.
Right, whoever has our carts today.
So whoever has your carts. Can you add that to your slide deck so you can clarify? Okay. And then I think that's it. When will you be back here?
June 7th.
June 7th. Okay, I think I see no further people in the queue.
We have Council President Gilmore, Councilman Cashman, and Councilman Kinich in the queue.
Back in the queue, okay. President, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the implementation costs. We have inspectors that we're going to hire or have on the city's payroll to combat illegal dumping. But what I'm not seeing is in the implementation costs, are we hiring any individuals to facilitate education, outreach, someone who's bilingual to navigate or to assist residents in navigating this brand new program? I don't see any individuals who are going to be hired to specifically implement an education and outreach plan.
So right, you don't see that in our costs, but that's because we are dedicating all of our education, a lot of our education funds to those community-based contracts. So we're trying out that model where we provide the educational materials for the community organizations, and then they help educate residents in the way that works best for them and their communities.
So who is a resident then supposed to call if they have questions or they just want more, I guess, information about getting services, having a driver come up and pull their trash can back, just customer service. It seems like a very diluted process for education and outreach, and I understand the philosophy of engaging community organizations and nonprofits, but that can also create some gaps where people don't know exactly who is the volume-based pricing navigator who folks in the city will call, and we don't have one, and it's a huge gap and a concern.
Well, the process would be that residents can call 311. Our customer service team will be fully equipped to answer any.
So 311 is going to be our navigation.
311 would direct that call to solid waste customer service, who is more specialized in these topics and will be able to answer those questions. If not, we do have Dottie's Office of Community Engagement. So we do have an internal team that does work on education and outreach, and they're part of our current education working group today and are also fully equipped to answer any of these questions or programmatic.
So could you, before you come back to committee for us to take action on this, I would like to see some sort of flow chart to show if a resident has a question about, when you look in the presentation, the street sweeping slide is a bit confusing, and it's already confusing enough in residential areas because we don't have street sweeping signs, at least in the far northeast suburbs and in other neighborhoods. And so folks don't really ever know. Councilwoman Sandoval, to your point, you get the alert about trash, but folks don't get alerts about street sweeping. And so, but then we're also instructing residents to then pull their 3 bins up onto the sidewalk, and we'll be blocking a sidewalk. And so what happens when right-of-way enforcement, lo and behold, comes out to a neighborhood and they're like, oh my gosh, this resident, they're blocking the sidewalk. I'm gonna issue them a ticket for that, when that is what we're asking them to do. And so it just feels like it's a very diluted, again, process for people to get information. We don't have, we're gonna hire 3 individuals to do citywide support and navigation or connection to resources for residents.
Yeah, and that is a great point. So I just want to talk about the process that we currently have. When there is a need from a resident, whether that's asking about more recycling, composting, street sweeping, whatever the issue may be, the process, you would call 311, and they have specific topics that they can answer. If they do not answer the question, then it goes to the solid waste queue. The solid waste queue, those 2 things. 1, it goes to the supervisor, which creates an action for the driver. 2, it goes to the management team, which would be the managers that I have or myself. At that point, we determine, right, if it's a question about outreach or more education. The managers, field superintendents, will then funnel the information to the person that we need to get that answer from. So it could be, if there's a billing question and we need some assistance from Jessica, then we would funnel that to Jessica. Jessica will answer that. All that process happens within 24 hours. So we're not waiting to send information to the residents to answer their questions, right? So it's a very detailed process that we have, and depending on the need, that's where that information gets funneled to. There's information that comes to me, and I'm not sure if I've answered some of the council office's questions, but there's also information that comes to me where some of the council offices are asking for information, and I even say, just let the customer know if they want more information to call me, because they have detail or they want specific questions answered. So we do have a process where we addressed all of those concerns depending on what they are. And like I said, those answers go out within 24 hours.
So I would have to say that when I tell a resident to call 311, that is always not the best response, because as you might imagine with NIS, with other issues, kudos to you all that you turn it around within 24 hours. But it seems, again, if we are as committed as we are saying we are as a city, and our values are that we want to move to volume-based pricing, it only seems equitable and fair to our Denver residents that we have a robust outreach and education campaign that is not only gearing up now, but that it's long-term. And so that is my next question, is what is the education plan? What is, you're talking to somebody who did natural resources and science-based education for over 20 years. I never went into a school classroom without having an education plan that was correlated back to the teaching standards and that I could show exactly what we were trying to accomplish. I haven't seen an educational plan that's going to be implemented along with this program. It starts and stops here, but I haven't seen anything comprehensive. And so I would ask to also see that as well. And then finally, because I know we've got 2 more members in the queue, what were some of the conversations and the questions of the Spanish-speaking group that you met with in Montbello? And again, Art, I appreciate you putting yourself out there for customer service, but it's not necessarily sustainable for us to always be depending on you. And so that's why I'd like to see a couple folks hired to oversee the nonprofit community-based education that's going on and oversee that. But if you could share with us some of the feedback from folks in Montbello.
Absolutely. And that, you know, me going out there, I see that as part of my job. I've done this before. And yeah, when you say it's not sustainable, I agree with you to a certain point, but when there's a need, we will do whatever we need to do to go out there. As you may or you may not know, Jessica speaks Spanish also. She's available. We do have quite a few Spanish-speaking team members in the group. And the reason I went out to your neighborhood last week, because I haven't been out in a long time. We have been in the offices for the last 2 years doing Zoom meetings. And that is part of my job that I enjoy, going out there and talking to people and listening to their concerns and addressing some of their questions. And who better to answer those questions about solid waste than the solid waste director, right? I can tell you that the residents, mainly Hispanic residents, were concerned about the fee. They asked, you know, why a fee? They were concerned about that. However, as we explained and went through the whole program, I think towards the end, people understand what we're trying to do. You know, that we're talking about the need for weekly recycling and people already composting. And there was probably about 22, 25 people there. Most of the negative comments or the negative comments that we got were for probably 3 people, and wanted to just bring up why are we issuing or starting a fee, right? We got a lot of positive feedback. They appreciated the fact that I did the presentation in Spanish, and also I took the time to do some recruiting, and that was very popular at the end. I had a lot of people come up to me and ask me for information about that. So once again, going out there, you know, I have made myself available to go out there. I see that as part of my job, and I have no problems going out there and talking to people, whether it's in Spanish, English, or Spanglish.
All right, great, thank you. And I appreciate that work, Art. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up, let me make sure I have the order correct. Thank you, Mr. Cashman. Next up, we have
Always
Paul
glad
Cashman.
to help, Madam Chair. I want to underscore what President Gilmore said. I am concerned that what I've heard about planned education and publicity and for this program is not enough. I really think this program could be transformative, but if we're just dropping barrels and sending out some postcards, I don't think that's going to get us anywhere near what we need. And I question that the level of public engagement that this is going to require is something that existing staff with minor additions can handle. This would seem to me tailor-made for people that do this full-time as a profession, this scale. So I would hope you would come back with a more robust plan for that. The last thing is just a question, and it was something I believe was Councilmember Black touched on, but what do we need to do as a city to increase the amount of construction debris that gets recycled and reprocessed? Because, like I say, I mean, there's been a house being built across the street from me, and dumpster after dumpster after dumpster over the past few months just disappears, and I have a hunch that's just going to landfill.
So you're talking about C&D, construction and demolition, recycling for industrial customers, right? What we need to do is we need to take a look at the legislature that we have in place, right? A lot of the cities that you saw on the map, they already have some of them do not. But we gotta take a look at the commercial sector, just as the industry, right? We need to take a look at how we can, as a city or as a state, improve the legislation that we have, because that's gonna help us out achieve our goals sooner than later.
Well, this is something I'm interested in. We can talk offline.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's an area that would really enable us to divert a whole lot more from our landfill.
Completely agree with you, and let's get together and talk.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman.
Councilman.
Up next, we have Councilwoman Knuch. Thank you for your help.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think this has been a really great dialogue, and I think it's part of why we do informational briefings on big topics, because I think that we always, when there's council members partnering with agencies, it allows us to help refine. So on the education and outreach conversation, here's my suspicion. I think there are some pieces of the education outreach plan that you just can't see in these high line items that we need to better articulate. There are more personnel doing communication than you can see in these large buckets. So part of this is helping us to better communicate back what's already in the plan. But then I also suspect we've heard some new ideas today about bolstering the plan. And I think that, that's, really helpful for us to be able to come back to you and give, I think, an FTE count of who's doing outreach and presentations today. And it might be that some of that work is happening in CASR and some is happening in Dottie, and we need to FTE that out and then talk about where any new net FTE live. And it might be different than the line items folks are reacting to today, but we might also be able to put more in. So I just want to make clear that I think the conversation has been helpful. And, Councilman Clark and I, as we go back with the team after these conversations, do our best to help make sure that the things that you all raise, that we're responsive. And so I hope that we can try to provide some interim information even before we come back to committee. Obviously, we've done a number of briefings, and we're probably past that season now. I want to say how grateful I am of how much time folks have given to this topic and this team, both full briefings and follow-ups. It has been enormously dedicated, the time council members have spent learning about and frankly shaping this package. It has been shaped by each of these conversations. So anyway, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find some good, satisfying answers. We just have to break out information in ways that people are asking for in terms of FTEs, dollar amounts, roles, and also the difference between the customer service responsive side and the proactive outreach side. I think those two are really both important, and we can provide that in a different way. The other thing I think we can do is talk to the attorneys a little bit about some of the questions that were raised in terms of special accommodations for those with disabilities and get more clarity on that. I think that's why people have extra bins today, is because of a special accommodation, and I think that we should have the legal authority we need to continue to provide special accommodations. So that's something we should have more dialogue with the attorneys about and clarify how we can do the maximum in that area. So those are some things that I just wanted to highlight that I'll particularly work hard to follow up on, but we all have lots of notes. And so I guess the only other thing I will say is, we will be coming back for action, and I don't want folks to sit through repetitive things that you've already heard in these prior informational briefings. So if anyone has feedback on anything else you didn't bring up that needs to be covered in that final presentation in committee, can you please let us know, let the team know? Everyone's kind of working with different point people, I think, but just let whoever you've been working with know. I don't know that we have the whole meeting next time. My guess is we will have other items on the agenda. So it will probably be focused on follow-up from this conversation and not reviewing every single piece. And so just to prepare folks that we won't be reviewing things we've already gone over unless someone has asked the team to do that. So if there's anything else that folks need in between, obviously this education piece we can report on in between, but please just let us know. And I'm really excited. As I get into the final year of my 12th year of this office, I feel like continue to claim the old timer card, but this has been a priority of the council in like 8 or 9 of our 10 or 11 council priority lists to implement the solid waste master plan. It has actually been in our council goals more time than I think any other specific plan or topic. Housing gets mentioned, but as a specific plan or specific strategy, that solid waste master plan has been in there for a lot of years. So I'm really excited and grateful to everybody for it. And so, you know, we'll do our best to be responsive and bring it back on June 7th. So thank you. Oh, and one more thing. I think Randy left, but there is a producer responsibility bill that I'm hopeful made it over a finish line today. I haven't seen my updates. Councilman Cashman's question about construction and demolition, producers, including cardboard, are in that bill, and that might touch some of those industries. So if anyone has any information on how that bill might impact some of the other industries, when the producers have to step in and fund some of that work, that actually might be helpful for council members if there's an update. If that bill passes and we have some information to share, can someone do that? I don't know who would be the right person. Maybe we'll ask Randy from EcoCycle, who had to leave. But that might be the best answer to Councilman Cashman's question.
And I think we can ask Councilwoman Black to follow that in her work as our state representative from City Council. So thank you all for meeting with us, and I'll just end on a deconstruction ordinance has been on my list of things to do, so maybe we have a partnership, PK, Councilman Cashman, sorry, on how important it is to also demolition as it's occurring to recycle that. So with that, we will adjourn and we will see you next week. Thank you all.